This next year is going to get absolutely crazy. It's a midterm election season, and the Democrats shouldn't panic. They should go into shock. So saith a guest essay for the New York Times. Now, this story from about 2 weeks ago, but we have another story in the New York Times. A pollster's warning to Democrats. We have a problem. Focus groups with Virginia voters led to a bluntly worded memo on what Democrats need to do going into the midterms. And then we have this story from the Washington Post just the other day. Democratic midterm fears mount as policies fail to resonate with voters. I think you look at the data, you look at 538, look at the polls. The Democrats are in trouble. They were so hell-bent on winning in 2020, they had to take the presidency. They didn't realize what that meant. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Sure, they defeated Trump, the evil, bad orange man, but now they're inheriting COVID. They've screwed up on it. Joe Biden is not the man to lead this country. His policies have led to economic crises, and they try to blame everyone but the Democratic administration. I want to make sure I don't bury this because I know the fact checkers will come out and be like, actually, Tim Pool's wrong. The cost of gas is going up due to demand issues. Joe Biden shutting down Keystone, Joe Biden banning fracking, Joe Biden's policies in that regard caused rampant speculation. Now, I'm not saying he intended for that to happen, but these are the result of his policies. I'm not saying that in the long run it's good or bad. I'm saying stop trying to shut down what is plainly true. The cost of energy will have a direct impact on inflation. Food costs are skyrocketing. My family is talking about, my sister's got kids and she's saying food prices are going way up. The people at the grocery store, General Mills, announcing they're going to be increasing prices by 20%. And the number one issue for parents, for people in the upcoming election is the economy. Black Americans, the economy. Women, the economy. Latinos, the economy. Men, the economy. White men, the economy. Under Donald Trump, in 2019, we had a great economy. Many people told me it was the best economy they'd ever have. CNBC's Jim Cramer, who's apparently lost his mind in the past couple of days, said the greatest numbers of our lives. Well, COVID happened, and I certainly think it's fair to blame COVID for a lot of this, but many of the Democrat policies directly and negatively impacted the economy, and a regular voter can see it. Take a look at Florida. And no mandates, no vax mandates. They've got monoclonal antibodies, and they've got, I believe, the lowest rate of COVID cases right now. Now, these things fluctuate, these things change, and there's always some data point someone's trying to grab onto to say this works or it didn't work. But the point is, in the South, leaning towards Florida, things seem to be going way better. The economy is a booming. People have, there's low rates of COVID. So for whatever reason, I think Americans are going to see this, and they're going to say, I don't know for sure what you did, Joe, Kamala, the Democrats, Pelosi, but I can tell you this. Whatever Ron DeSantis did seems to be working. I think it's fair to point out different temperatures in Florida maybe has an impact on COVID, possibly, because there are many red states with high rates of COVID, high COVID cases. But I think regardless of what your opinion is there, the Democrats are in trouble. Independents are souring on them. Joe Biden's approval rating is in the gutter, and I don't think there's anything they can do. The Republicans will probably win. But my friends, I don't think the Republicans are here to save you. I think if you would like to save yourself, you must be active in the primaries for the Republican Party. Now, for all the complaints about some of these more populist Republican types, these are the people who are better set to serve the American people than the establishment elites who take lobbying money. Don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. The establishment shills will keep the machine a-churning. So what you got to do is you got to vote in the state elections. You got to vote in your local elections. And you got to vote in the primaries. And make sure these establishment financial district types, finance sector, aren't the people taking over. But for now, I think we do have good news in that the Democrats shouldn't panic. They should go into shock. So say at the New York Times. While the Democrats, I don't necessarily think, are very, very different from the Republicans. The fact is, at least there are some Republicans. Your Rand Pauls, right? Thomas Massie, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly much better. There's very few anti-establishment Democrats. Even the leftist Democrats are willing to support the machine. This panic is good, not great. I do like the Mises Caucus, and maybe they can pull out some kind of trick, and it would be fantastic if we got a couple of members of Congress in there from the Libertarian Party. Maybe we could see some big numbers for the Libertarian Party, which could have an impact on how the debates are held. But I'll tell you this, at the very least, this is some good news. Pollsters across the board saying there's going to be a red wave come 2022. But I'll just stress before we get into all this news, if you don't get active and vote local, vote state, and vote in the primaries, it will be for nothing. I don't think most Republicans have great policies, but the free staters and the libertarian types who use the Republican Party as their vehicle, big fan for the most part, even if we disagree. Let's read this before we get started. Head over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to exclusive members-only segments from the Timcast IRL podcast and to support our journalists. This is how we fund the several journalists we have now. I think we have maybe like 8 or 10 people writing breaking news. We have field reporters. We're going to be doing investigations and we're going to be doing on-the-ground reporting. It's all funded thanks to membership. We don't do these stupid games like BuzzFeed where we mandate quotas. You got to get X amount of views. Otherwise, no. You write the news you want to write. If it's true, we fact check it, we publish it, and maybe people won't read it. But that's the benefit of subscription-based news. So please be a member, support our work, but don't forget to subscribe to this channel, share this video, smash the like button. Let's read the first story, the more recent one. A pollster's warning to Democrats. We have a problem. Focus groups in Virginia led to a bluntly worded memo on what Democrats need to do going into the midterms. Now, I want to highlight that feller down in New Jersey who ran against the incumbent Democrat state senator, a trucker who spent $153 and he won. He barely even campaigned, if at all. Because as I've said, there are people at this point ready to vote for a ham sandwich over the Democratic candidate. The New York Times reports Brian Stryker, a Democratic pollster, didn't work for Terry McAuliffe's campaign in the Virginia governor's race. But Mr. McAuliffe's narrow defeat in a liberal-leaning state alarmed him and most every Democratic political professional. That defeat also prompted a centrist group, Third Way, to have Mr. Stryker convene focus groups to examine why Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin won in a state that President Biden had carried by 10 points last year. I have maintained this. There are a lot of people who are going out there saying fraud, fraud, fraud. They're going out there saying Arizona audit, PA audit, Wisconsin. And I'm saying y'all are being distracted. Y'all are being distracted. Democrats got that ground game. They had the shadow campaign to fortify the election. They changed the rules along with the help of establishment Republicans. What you need to understand, Donald Trump was vilified to a great degree by the media. Certainly think Trump was better than Joe Biden, but he was a bit of a nasty guy in a lot of ways. But the reason Trump loses, and there's a lot of reasons, is yes, the establishment lined up against him. Rules were changed well in advance. In Pennsylvania, a year before the election, they implemented universal mail-in voting well before the COVID pandemic because Republicans didn't like him either. But I will tell you this, same as I told Steve Bannon. When I go on Facebook and I see my skateboard friends posting fervently about how they have to vote for Biden, I was like, man, they really did it. Because these are people that couldn't tell you which way was left or right. They couldn't tell you the name of a single member of Congress, but boy, were they ready to go out and vote. That's it. And that's why I've said I think Ron DeSantis is the better choice for 2024. But I got to be honest, at this point, considering that we're still several years away from the actual election, 2024, man, like I said, I think many people are ready to vote for a ham sandwich over the Democratic Party. Maybe the truth was that in 2022, people were ready to vote for a ham sandwich over Donald Trump because they did not like him. When it's not Trump, when it was Youngkin, a Republican, he wins because Trump, he was sour to a lot of people. They want to say Mr. Stryker drafted and posted a bluntly worded memo with his analysis from the focus groups, and that memo has circulated widely in his party. The participants hailed from the suburbs of Washington and Richmond and had the same political profile. Each supported Mr. Biden in 2020 and either voted for Youngkin in November or strongly considered supporting him. In an interview at the Times, Stryker expanded on what he learned from the voters and the course correction he believes Democrats must take. He was asked, what was the first thing you told your partners after you got done with the groups? He said, I was surprised by how dominant education was in this election. I was also struck by how much it was this place for all these frustrations for the suburban voters, where they could take out their COVID frustrations in one place. Education. A lot of people believe that the core core element that shifted this election towards the Republican Party in Virginia was critical race theory. I do not believe that is the case. I certainly believe it played a large role because there were many people who are concerned about this, but I still believe that critical race theory and critical race praxis are too esoteric for the average person. What we learned from a lot of the data, not just from Democrat groups, but from other pollsters, independents and conservative, was that COVID restrictions played a role. And that's something I think is good for the Republican Party, especially a Ron DeSantis. If Ron DeSantis implemented his policies at the federal level, it'd be great. But many people pointed out the president doesn't have that power over the states, Ninth and 10th Amendment, as it were. And thus, Ron DeSantis is better served serving Florida, because then he can actually implement statewide policies or enforce them. So they're going to say, so if you're advising a Democratic client in 2022, what do you tell them? He said, I would tell them that we have a problem. We've got a national branding problem that is probably deeper than a lot of people suspect. Our party thinks maybe some things we're saying aren't cutting through, but I think it's much deeper than that. People think we're more focused on social issues than the economy, and the economy is the number one issue right now. We probably haven't been as focused on the economy as we should be. I think some of that is voters reading us talking about things that aren't economic issues. Part of it is just natural reaction too. We're in an economy they feel is tough. It's hard for them to think we've solved problems when they see so many. Now, this is brilliant on the part of conservatives and Republicans, bringing up the critical race theory, pulling Democrats into that fight while they meanwhile say, remember Trump? Remember 2019? So they can come out and force Democrats to be like, critical race theory, okay, it's a not true, Republicans, and try and push that back. Meanwhile, the economy is falling apart. It's getting terrible out there. Yo, I bought a guitar recently because we're recording a bunch of songs, and it was expensive. It was an expensive guitar. I mean, I'll just tell you, it was just shy of $1,000. And I'm like, this is cool. And then we went into the studio, and I had this really old guitar that I bought for $500 several years ago. And I was like, this one must be made overseas because it was so much cheaper. And then I looked, and they were comparable. And then I realized, I was like, whoa, man. Comparable guitar models and everything. And within a few years, the price had doubled. I don't know if that's true for all guitars, but I immediately started asking my friends, like, wait a minute, what? How? Yo, I went to a guitar shop, and the guy told me that if you order a guitar today, you're not going to get it for like a year or longer. And I was like, get out of here. He's like, what we got is what we got. He's like, we can get a lot of stuff in stock, but the supply chain is broken. We're trying to do studio expansion. We got more shows we're building. We're growing fast. And we got our construction guy being like, yo, I can't get this ductwork stuff done. I can't get the materials for this. So I don't know what you want me to do. And I'm like, close it up. I'm not kidding. Who do I blame for this? Yo, I blame Joe Biden. Look, man, food prices are going up. Energy independence was destroyed, was crippled. Joe Biden's got the southern border wide open, gas prices through the roof, trucker shortages. And what is he saying? Well, he's keeping Fauci on. Fauci's talking about prepare for the worst. Omicron is here. We may have lockdowns. Joe Biden says we don't need lockdowns for now. If everyone gets vaccinated, wears their masks. Yeah, we get it. They've not done enough to bring things back. In fact, they've done enough to actually make things worse. They're going to say right now, this guy, a striker, says, the number one issue for women right now is the economy. The number one issue for black voters is the economy. The number one issue for Latino voters is the economy. I'm not advocating for us ignoring social issues, but when we think broadly about voters, they actually all want us talking about the economy and doing things to help them out economically. I will tell you. You go to a bar, you go to the casino, you go to the restaurant, you look around at these regular people. I'll tell you the one thing they got no idea about: critical race theory, social justice. Now, I get it. I talk about culture war stuff too all the time, and it is. I think social issues are very important. But I'll tell you the one thing they do know about. We went out to grab lunch, to grab a dinner, have a meeting with a potential new contractor, I'll say. And so we're sitting down to have a conversation. I open the menu and I'm looking at the chicken wings, and they pull out the menu. They used a pen to increase the price of chicken and slid it back. And I open it up and I see scribblings on it. And I was like, wow, you know what that means? It means the prices went up so quickly they didn't have time to order new menus. Or it means they're lazy and they don't want to order new menus if they're only raising the price on chicken. But the price, it was all over the menu. And I'm like, It's not hard to print out a piece of paper and get these new menus printed. No, they needed to make the price updates ASAP. That's how bad it is. I think you go to these restaurants, regular people are going to see this. A big part of the problem was that people didn't feel they knew enough about McAuliffe. Governors in particular during COVID were on TV all the time. But I want to show you what I think is a very, very important issue here. The interviewer says, let's come back to schools. How much of what drove that for Mr. Youngkin is that we're 18 months into COVID and voters are simply fatigued and want someone to blame. Voters don't think that in general, a lot of Democrats felt really bad about closing the schools or felt like it was a really negative on people. I think showing some empathy on that could go a long ways in terms of, yes, closing schools was hard on kids and hard on parents. You know it. I know it. I've seen it. I don't have kids. But how many people said, we need schools to be open? I can't work because my kids are at home and I can't afford a daycare or a nanny. You know, parents use schools as daycare. I'm not a fan of that at all. Sending your kids to institutionalized government learning facilities because you and the wife need to be working. I like the idea that a parent can actually stay home and only one has to work, but that requires a strong economy. And unfortunately, we don't have that. But when you have a bad economy because Joe Biden's stuttering and stammering and he can't get anything done, and then they say, oh, by the way, Democrats are going to shut your schools down, so sending your kids home. The parents are probably feeling like they're in a vice, just being squeezed out. The COVID thing, I think, was really important to bring up because of what we're seeing right now with Joe Biden, with Fauci, with what their plans are. First, something I've shown quite a bit from the Daily Beast. We screwed up. This is really a 3-dose vaccine. We've got this story from Newsweek, which I find laughable. Democrats disavow lockdowns they embraced under Trump as COVID riots rock Europe. Yeah. It really does sound like they're desperate to make it seem like Democrats oppose the lockdowns. But Joe Biden didn't say no lockdowns. Joe Biden said, for now. The president said on Monday that his administration would put forward a plan to deal with the new variant, not with shutdowns or lockdowns, but with more widespread vaccinations, boosters, testing, and more. The best protection against this variant or any of the variants is to get fully vaccinated, get the booster, et cetera, et cetera. If people are vaccinated and wear their mask, there's no need for a lockdown. At the time, Biden said he would do whatever it takes to tackle the spread of the virus. I would shut it down. I would listen to the scientists. He told ABC in a joint interview with Kamala Harris just last year in 2020. Biden later said those remarks referring to the fact that he would follow the advice, saying, there's going to be no need, in my view, to be able to shut down the whole economy. Well, boy, let me tell you, my friends, Joe Biden told us that very same thing at the beginning of this year. We don't need lockdowns. We don't need vaccine mandates. And then what happened? I mean, we were under lockdown for almost a year and a half, just over a year. He said, we don't need vaccine mandates. And now here we are. Germany just announced unvaccinated. You can't go out to essential. You can only go out for essential shopping. You got to stay in your house. You're only allowed contact with 2 people. I know. We're not Germany. I'm just pointing out the extreme actions being taken by other countries. Now, when it comes to Democrats, how many people are going to trust them? We can all see Florida and Texas. Boy, they're free. Their businesses are open. How many of these voters run small businesses like a bodega? And they're looking at their bottom line and they're saying nobody's coming here anymore. Nobody can come here. They locked us all down. How many people in New Jersey were told they couldn't run their business? There was that lady. She was shut down by the cops. So she goes on Facebook and does a live stream of the products in her store and says, if any of you want any of this stuff, just send me a message. And the police showed up to her closed store and they say, ma'am, you have to stop. And she said, what, why? And they were like, you got to close. And she goes, I am closed. And they're like, no. You're streaming and trying to sell products. What does that have to do with COVID? Regular people get it. They're going to beat you down. And you know what? Many of these cops, they don't care. So I'm not surprised we're getting abolish the police movement. Now, on November 17th, from the New York Times, Democrats shouldn't panic. They should go into shock. And boy, does Thomas B. Edsall pull no punches. The rise of inflation, supply chain shortages, a surge in illegal border crossings, the persistence of COVID, mayhem in Afghanistan, the uproar over critical race theory, all of these developments individually and collectively have taken their toll on Biden and Democratic candidates, so much so that Democrats are now the underdogs going into 2022 and possibly 24. Gary Langer director of polling at ABC News, put it this way in an essay published on the network's website. As things stand, if the midterm elections were today, 51% of registered voters would say they support the Republican candidate in their congressional district. 41% say the Democrat. That's the biggest lead for Republicans in the 110 ABC Post poll that has asked this question since November 1981. Good. But please vote local, get out there in the primary, and make sure these establishment shills aren't the ones taking over. The policies of Democrats are not resonating. You know, I know because left-leaning Bezos' Washington Post says so. In their story, they say, Democrats are terrible at messaging, Kirsten Gillibrand said. According to notes taken by one attendee, it's just a fact. The admission surprised some attendees for its frankness, but it's a sentiment that is widely shared among other lawmakers, donors, and party leaders. Well, it's correct. Democrats are absolutely terrible at messaging. Fortunately for them, they have their media component, which is just their PR arm. We know that big mainstream media organizations are just the communications division for the Democratic Party. I know I'm being somewhat facetious. Calm down at mainstream media. I'm not being literal. I'm pointing out that many of these institutions will run cover for Joe Biden. When Joe Biden comes out and says, true and anana shabba pressure and bada calf care, they just don't report it. When Joe Biden comes out and says, we're going to get pass Medicaid reform, the articles written by the mainstream press says Biden emphasized passing Medicaid or Medicare reform. And it's like, show the actual quote. You don't know what he meant to say. There's an actual quote for him from Joe Biden where he said, it is estimated that by the time I'm finished with the speech, 200 million people will die from COVID. And I'm just like, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean because 200 million people didn't die. They're not going to die. It's just a crazy number, 200 million. But he said it, and the media covers it up. They translate for him. Even conservative media does this because they're like, well, here's what we think he meant. No, stop. Show what the guy is saying. Yeah, they're bad at messaging, but fortunately, the media is there to pick up the pieces. WAPO goes on to say, beyond a struggle to sell nuts and bolts of legislation, there are deeper fears among Democrats in the party that lack a cohesive and convincing argument to win over voters in next year's election. Name it. Name a policy. Name a Democrat. Because I go on Twitter and I see the Democratic socialist types being like, there's not a single Democrat that's going to give us any progressive policy. I see these Antifa types on Facebook and they're saying the Democratic Party are corporatist centrists. And I'm like, they're not centrists, but they're authoritarian corporatists. That's for sure. I don't know if center really matters. And I think it's like people call them centrists simply because they're just authoritarian in any capacity. They're corporatist. So if the progressives agree the Democrats suck and the populist right agrees the Democrats suck, I think it's fair to say the Democrats don't have any real policy positions other than like half measures. And then we have the fact that they don't even have a leading person. Name the Democrat who's going to be leading the party. Pete Buttigieg? Well, apparently Buttigieg has been campaigning with Kamala Harris, so the rumors are out there. But I'll tell you this. I think if Trump runs in 2024, I think he'll win. I don't know for sure, and I'm not saying it's a great chance. What I mean is there are a lot of people who hated Donald Trump. If Trump ran again, I think a lot of these people are going to be like, yo, I'm not making that mistake again. We saw how bad things got when Trump was out. Let's just either not vote or vote him back in. There are a lot of people I know that actually left the country. Not that I think that's going to have a big effect, but some of these people who are Americans and screaming about Trump still ended up leaving, which was surprising to me. And I mean it. Now, again, anecdotal. But I think a lot of people saw how good the economy was in 2019, and they'll see Trump and they'll be like, I'm not going to tell my friends, but, I'm voting for Trump. Reminds me of this episode of 30 Rock in the first season where Tina Fey, SNL, writer and comedian, says in the show, like her character is written this way. I know it's not real life, but this is interesting. Tina Fey writes a character who says, I'll tell all my friends I voted for Obama, but I'll really vote for McCain. Why is that? I think it's obvious to a lot of people that there are many individuals who lie. They lie to pollsters, they lie to their friends, and they will vote for Trump. They won't tell you, though. That's Trump's phantom vote, the Trump secret voters, because they're scared of the social ramifications. They're scared of losing their jobs or getting canceled. So they'll vote for the guy. Now, I find this next story to be particularly interesting and kind of funny, considering Democrats are the ones who claim to be about social justice. From the Hill, Ronna McDaniel writes, minorities and women are leading the red wave. Yeah, it's true. And Ronna McDaniel is, what was she? She's chair of the GOP. So, certainly she has her bias. But it is true. We've seen this. In South Texas, for instance, the border counties turned red, and they're like Latino counties. In Miami, everybody thought this district in Miami was going to be safe Democrat, and it flipped Republican. Why? I mean, come on. These people who have fled Cuba and Venezuela know exactly what's going on with these far leftists. So it's a good reason to believe Republicans are going to win. 538 just comes out and says it, which is funny to me. Why Virginia and New Jersey's elections could suggest a red wave in 2022. Yeah, it could. Now, we're a year away. Who knows? For all we know, a bunch of Republicans come out and do something really dumb, like, with all the things people hate about the COVID lockdowns. Imagine how stupid the Republican Party would be if, they tried to create a vaccine registry or something. Maybe they'll do something that dumb and then just throw the entire election and hand it over to the Democrats. Oh, from Breitbart. Tool to enforce Orwellian rules. 80 House Republicans help pass bill to fund federal vaccination database. Okay. Yeah, maybe the Republican Party would do something that stupid. Okay, they did. That's why the Republican Party is trash. I like the Mises Caucus guys. I hope they can, pull out some victories here and there. And I'm absolutely willing to vote for any one of these libertarian guys because they're good dudes. That's really it. I don't know about all of them. I know Dave Smith's a good dude. I know. I think Michael Malice. He's not running, but Malice is a good friend of the show, a good friend of ours, and he would be the press secretary for Dave Smith. So we're really excited for that. I'm not saying I think they can win, but I prefer Mises guys. I don't agree with them on everything, but if you're going to be honest with me and you're going to try and leave me alone, and I trust you in that regard, I'll give that a shot. Right? The Republicans do things like this, and that's why I say get involved in your primaries. Figure out when these guys are running. And I'll tell you this, run for office if you can. If you want to get involved and you're worried that, if you're in an area that's got you've got a congressperson running unopposed, I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, run against them. Just be like, hey, I'm regular Joe. I'm an alternative. Regular Jane. I'm an alternative. Because look at what happened with that state senator in New Jersey. Some trucker dude was like, I don't like this guy. I want to run. And they're like, dude, I will take it. I'm at the point where I think people are ready to say no to the establishment. You get some regular folks. Find me a gas station attendant. Find me a fast food clerk. Spend $100. Get your name on the ballot. Stand up on a soapbox in your neighborhood. AOC ended up winning in New York in this district in the primary, I think with 15,000 votes. That's it out of 750,000 people. You get out there in a soapbox and you be like, I don't know much about any of this stuff. I am but a humble Wendy's register attendant. But I can tell you this, I ain't playing their game. Vote for me. It's better than voting for the machine. I think a lot of people said that about AOC. AOC's done a really good job of joining the machine. The Republicans seem uninterested in, for the most part, standing up to the machine. They're a part of it. Let's be real. But how amazing would it be if you were that bartender? One of the stupidest things conservatives say to AOC is, hey, she's just a bartender. And I'm like, that's cool. That's the one thing I'll give her credit for. Well, she was an actress. I don't care, whatever. If you're a bartender and you say the machine is broken, I'm running, and you win, bravo. I cheered for AOC when she won. Not a fan of hers. I think she's a liar. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being a bartender. I think bartending's actually a pretty cool profession. You ever watch someone make a drink and they do cool tricks where they line up all the glasses and then pour all the alcohol and there's fire and they do tricks and they're spinning the bottle? Get out of here. Bartending's cool. So if you're any job, if you're a plumber, if you're a tradesman, if you take care of lawn work, if you work for a billionaire and you'll flush his toilets for a living, man, get out there, run for office, because it'll be the greatest thing to see a wave of regular Americans saying, we the people, for us, by us. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your orientation or identity. Challenge the machine. I don't care if you're left or right. In fact, leftist populists, please primary these Democrats. I supported a progressive Democrat primarying Nancy Pelosi. I donated the maximum. Why? Because Pelosi is garbage. Now, look, I'm not a fan of the policy of many of these progressive leftists, but I will support them because the machine is crooked and corrupt. And I'd much prefer populists in any capacity because we agree on some things I'm happy with. You know, when people complain about police brutality, when people complain about police overreach, I'm like, dude, I agree with all of that. And like, I'll give you an example. Like when the police shut down small business, the left may not be focused on that, but if they're concerned about, improper actions of the state, I'm going to be like, okay, hey, better than the establishment machine, which is like appoint our cronies and use it to steal power and maintain power. I think the biggest mistake Republicans are going to make is here with this COVID stuff, because we already know that Democratic voters screwed this up by embracing it or ignoring it and seeming callous. What we need is people to primary the machine. Each and every one of these incumbents, go to your primary. I assure you, if you do even a fraction of the campaign work they do, you'll win. Because you're going to walk up to someone and say, hey, I'm a dude. I work at a Jiffy Lube and I'm sick of the machine. Like, what are your policy positions? I got to be honest. I don't have strong politics. I'll learn and I'll do my best. But I'll tell you this, man, I am sick of the establishment, revolving door, crony capitalist BS. It's not far left. It's not far right. The establishment Republicans and Democrats play the exact same game. The only difference of the past few years is that the Republicans actually got invaded by Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders, the left populist, Trump, the right populist, they tried to break in. Trump did it. Bernie didn't. The establishment Republicans flocked to the Democratic Party to shore up their defenses, and the Republicans were able to take some ground. But regardless, too many Republicans are still establishment shills. Trash. Primary them all. I want to see more AOCs. I want to see right-wing AOCs. Look at Lauren Boebert. She showed up and she was like, you ain't taking my guns. And then she ran and she won. You can do it. We can make these changes. I'd love to see libertarians get in, some libertarian party members. I'd love to see that grassroots movements. I believe we can do it. I believe that we, this new generation and the generations that are younger than us, are going to view this very differently. And I believe we can break that we can break through the barrier to change the broken system. This is good news. Democrats freaking out because they're the establishment party right now. I think most of the actual populist leftists, the real ones, the ones that are pro-2A, for instance, recognize the problems with these people. And I think we can sit down and disagree, but the establishment, in my opinion, is the problem. I like what Kyle Kalinske said. You guys know Kyle, right? He's progressive. He's like, I just want like a New Deal Democrat that's not ultra woke and doesn't care what the media says. And I'm like, doesn't sound too dissimilar to Donald Trump. Like, I can roll with that. Yeah, get the wokeness out of there. Let's have a conversation. It's going to be up to you. So make sure you are peaceful, persuasive, resourceful. Make sure you are active in your local elections. Make sure you are stepping up. You can run for office and figure it out. I don't have all the answers for you, man, but it's time that we stood up and say, we're going to use the beautiful system made by the founding fathers to fix this. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.